The hostess eyed my simple dress as I stepped into the cool, quiet air of Sapphire. My brother Leo stood near the bar, holding court with a group of people who shimmered with wealth. I'd just landed a steady administrative job and wanted to celebrate. A foolish hope swelled in my chest that he'd be proud. He spotted me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Amara, what are you doing here?" I mumbled about wanting a table. He let out a soft, condescending laugh. "Amara, this place isn't for everyone. The cheapest wine here costs more than your rent." The laughter from his friends was like a physical slap. My face burned. I turned and walked out, the heavy door sealing behind me. His final words chased me. "Maybe when you can afford a reservation, you'll earn a seat at my table." That evening, the family dinner felt like a continuation of my humiliation. Mom patted my hand. "Oh honey, you know Leo, he's just teasing. You've always been a little too sensitive." Dad nodded, sipping his wine. "You have to admit, the boy has a head for business. That restaurant is the talk of the town." I pushed my food around my plate, feeling invisible. The praise for Leo was a constant soundtrack in our family, a song I'd heard my whole life. I forced a smile, biting my tongue to keep the words from tumbling out. Words about how his genius was built on a foundation I helped pour. The betrayal was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. Later, in my small apartment, the memory hit me with the force of a tidal wave. 10 years ago, Leo, fresh out of high school, his eyes full of fire. "Amara, I need to go to culinary school. It's my dream." I was saving every penny for my own bakery, but I saw his passion. I handed over my savings, a thick envelope of cash I'd worked 2 years to accumulate. "We're family," I'd said. He'd hugged me tightly. "I'll pay you back every cent, I promise, someday." Now, someday had never come. He acted as if it never happened. I dug through an old box of papers, my fingers finally closing around a faded receipt. There it was, a tuition deposit with my name noted as the payer. The first spark of anger ignited. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with me. A week later, I was called into my boss's office. "Company downsizing," he said, not meeting my eyes. I was laid off. As I packed my desk, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin. Attached was a screenshot of a group chat. Leo had written, "No surprise Amara got laid off. She never learned how to handle money, always too soft." I sat in my car in the empty parking lot, the steering wheel cool against my forehead. The tears came then, hot and shameful. Then they stopped. I wiped my face, took a deep, shuddering breath, and whispered into the silence, "Never again." Days later, drowning my sorrows in a cheap coffee, I heard a gentle voice. "Amara, is that you?" I looked up to see Mr. Abernathy, a kind, retired landlord I'd helped years ago with some complicated paperwork. We chatted. He mentioned he was selling off his commercial properties, getting ready to fully retire. One prime location, too. That building housing Sapphire. "My tenant's doing well, but I'm ready to be done." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. If only I could afford something like that. Mr. Abernathy studied me, his gaze thoughtful. He leaned forward. "You were the only one who ever treated an old man with real respect. Maybe we can work something out." A week later, I sat in Mr. Abernathy's study with my best friend Kendra, a sharp real estate paralegal. He laid out his offer, a below-market price with a flexible payment plan. "I trust your integrity, Amara, more than any corporation." My heart hammered against my ribs. Kendra squeezed my hand, then got down to business. "We can do this. We'll form a holding company. You'll secure small investors. Let's take this one step at a time. Leo won't see it coming." The plan was terrifying and exhilarating. I picked up the pen, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. I signed the confidentiality agreement, my identity hidden behind corporate walls. The first step was taken. Leo hosted a lavish family dinner at Sapphire, a blatant display of his success. He announced plans to expand, to create a culinary empire. Our parents beamed. When Mom asked about my job search, I mentioned I was working on a small business project. Leo chuckled, swirling his expensive red wine. "Oh, selling cupcakes again? That's cute, Amara." The table erupted in polite laughter. I didn't flinch. I simply smiled and took a sip of my water. The secret knowledge was my shield. That morning, I had transferred the first significant payment to Mr. Abernathy. I was already his landlord. Kendra introduced me to Arthur, an elderly, meticulous attorney and a friend of Mr. Abernathy's. In his quiet, book-lined office, Arthur helped me establish a trust. The building's lease was held by Keystone Holdings, with me as the sole, anonymous beneficiary. Legally airtight, Arthur assured me. I spent my nights not crying over my empty bank account, but studying. I devoured books on commercial property law, tenant rights, and financial management. The glow of my laptop was a beacon in the dark. I was no longer a victim, I was a student, preparing for a test I was determined to pass. Meanwhile, the first cracks appeared in Leo's perfect world. He complained to the family about his rising costs, blaming the greedy old landlord for his rent. He was unaware the building was already under new ownership. His investors, smelling risk, began pressuring him to secure his future. They urged him to sign a new, long-term lease renewal. The papers for that renewal would soon land on his desk, sent from my company. The trap was being set not by me, but by his own arrogance and their fear. The official notice arrived at Sapphire on a Monday. A letter from Keystone Holdings, informing Leo of the building's change in ownership and welcoming him as a tenant. Kendra told me he read it and scoffed, tossing it to his manager. Probably another greedy old man looking to squeeze me. Don't worry, I can handle him. I was at my kitchen table, eating a simple meal, when I got the text from Kendra. I read his words and smirked at the profound irony. He had no idea the greedy old man was his sister, the one he thought couldn't afford a glass of wine. The pressure was mounting, but Leo's ego was a powerful force. At a tense Sunday lunch, he boasted he was buying out his nervous business partner to gain full control. Our mother, for the first time, looked worried. Leo, honey, don't stretch yourself too thin. You've worked so hard for this. He waved her off, his confidence unshaken. I built this place from nothing, Mom. I know what I'm doing. I watched him from across the table, saying nothing. I was already running the numbers, planning the modest but firm rent adjustment his new lease would contain. The negotiation meeting was a storm. Leo, dressed in his finest suit, stormed into the conference room to meet Arthur, who was acting as my representative. When Arthur presented the new lease terms with the slightly increased rent, Leo's face turned purple. This is outrageous. I'll never pay a dime more to this place. Who does this Keystone think they are? Arthur remained perfectly calm, his hands folded on the table. He delivered the line we had practiced. Those are the terms. You have a choice, Mr. Vance. Either sign the renewal or your current lease expires next month. The silence in the room was absolute. Panic began to replace arrogance. Kendra called me, her voice tight. He's snooping, Amara. He's hired a private investigator to dig into Keystone Holdings. He's desperate to find the owner. A cold trickle of fear went down my spine. This was the moment everything could unravel. I took a deep breath, remembering the humiliation, the laughter, the condescension. My resolve hardened. Let him look, I told Kendra, my voice surprisingly steady. We've covered our tracks. He won't find me. Not until I'm ready for him to know. Fate, it seemed, was on my side. A scathing review from a prominent food critic hit the local paper, calling Sapphire pretentious and overpriced. Reservations dried up overnight. Leo's investors were furious. The financial pressure became a stranglehold. Yet, even in his crisis, he found time to mock me. At another family dinner, he said, "You're lucky you're not in business, Amara. You're too nice. You'd be eaten alive." I just nodded, a small secret smile playing on my lips. He was right about one thing. I was in business. And he was about to be eaten. The first of the month came and went. Leo's rent payment was late. Then, a week passed. I instructed Arthur to proceed. A formal legal notice was delivered by courier to the restaurant. It was stark and unforgiving. Payment for the month is now 7 days overdue. Failure to remit payment in full within 14 days will result in immediate eviction proceedings. Leo called it a bluff, a scare tactic. He laughed it off to his staff. But when his lawyer confirmed its validity, the laughter died in his throat. The game was over. The facade crumbled completely. Leo called the number for Keystone Holdings daily, begging to speak directly to the owner. The receptionist, following my instructions, politely but firmly stated, "The owner prefers to maintain her privacy at this time." His wife, Isabel, pleaded with him to just pay the money, to swallow his pride, but his pride was all he had left. He was too proud to ask our family for a loan, too proud to admit he was failing. He took out a high-interest personal loan to cover the debt, a temporary fix for a terminal problem. The family dynamic shifted. Our parents were now genuinely worried, hearing whispers of Leo's troubles. He came to Sunday dinner looking haggard. "This new landlord is ruthless. They're trying to ruin my business," he ranted. Mom fretted, and Dad offered useless advice. I listened while clearing the table. I met Leo's angry gaze and said, my voice soft but clear, "That's tough, Leo. Maybe you should have treated them with a little more respect from the start." The table went quiet. For the first time, no one immediately jumped to his defense. Desperate, Leo tried to sell a minority stake in the restaurant to raise capital and pay off his debts. But his reputation had soured. The bad review, the rumors of financial instability, and his own abrasive personality scared off potential investors. The doors that had once swung open for him were now firmly closed. His last gamble had failed. He was trapped, with no way out, and a countdown clock ticking loudly over his head. The empire he had built from nothing was crumbling, because he had forgotten the someone who helped him start. The day of the building's annual fire and safety inspection arrived. I decided it was time. I walked into Sapphire, not as a hopeful diner, but as the owner. I wore a simple professional pantsuit. Leo was arguing with the inspector, his voice strained. "There must be a mistake, we've always." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. "Amara? What are you doing here? Can't you see I'm busy?" I smiled calmly. "I'm here for the inspection, Leo." I extended my hand to the inspector. "Amara Vance, I'm the owner of Keystone Holdings." The color drained from Leo's face so completely I thought he might faint. "You?" he whispered, his world tilting on its axis. The confrontation was ugly. As soon as the inspectors moved to the kitchen, Leo exploded. You did this. You set me up. This was your plan all along." His voice echoed through the empty dining room. I remained perfectly calm, my hands at my sides. "I gave you every chance, Leo. I gave you my savings when you had nothing. You mocked me for it. You humiliated me in front of everyone. All I've done is manage my commercial property. Nothing more, nothing less." The inspectors left quickly, avoiding the family drama. The damage was done. The next day, his last remaining investor pulled out. There was no more room for negotiation. I met him in the restaurant one final time. The air was thick with his failure. He actually begged. "Amara, please, you're my sister. Have some mercy. Give me more time." I looked at him, remembering the sting of his words, the laughter of his friends. I remembered the tuition receipt and my empty savings account. I opened my folder and slid the formal eviction notice across the table. It was the final, silent answer. "You told me I couldn't afford to eat here," I said softly. "Turns out I can afford the whole building." The news spread like wildfire. The local business journal ran the story. Celebrity chef Leo Vance loses Sapphire amid financial scandal and family feud. The truth about my role as the secret landlord became the talk of the town. My phone buzzed constantly. My parents came to my apartment, their faces filled with a new, hesitant respect. "We're so sorry, Amara," my mom said, tears in her eyes. "We never knew. We never saw how he treated you." For the first time, they were on my side. The invisible daughter had finally been seen. A few months later, the space that was once Sapphire was reborn. The cold, minimalist decor was gone, replaced by warm, inviting colors and the sweet, comforting smell of baking bread. I named my bakery the Daily Rise. It was not about exclusivity, but community. The neighborhood flocked to it. People loved the pastries, the coffee, and the warmth that radiated from every corner. It was everything Leo's restaurant was not. It was my dream, finally realized, built from the ashes of his pride. One quiet morning before the breakfast rush, the bell on the door jingled. Leo stood there, looking older and subdued. He shuffled to the counter, not meeting my eyes, and ordered a black coffee. I poured it for him, my hand steady. He paid an exact change. "It's nice in here," he mumbled. I nodded. "Thank you." He looked like he wanted to say more, to apologize or to accuse, but the words wouldn't come. I broke the silence. "Everyone deserves a fresh start, Leo." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was closure. It was grace he had never offered me. I stood behind the counter, watching the bakery come to life. A young couple shared a scone, laughing. An elderly man read the paper in a sunny corner. The space that had once rejected me now radiated warmth and belonging. I had built this, not with a desire for revenge, but with a rediscovery of my own strength. The chapter with Leo was closed, but my story was just beginning. He told me I couldn't afford to eat there. Turns out, I could afford a lot more than that. I just needed to remember my own worth.